It hits different, doesn't it? When the knife twisting in your back isn't wielded by an enemy, but by the person who once swore to always have your back. The one who shared your childhood bedroom, your secrets, your dreams. For me, that dagger came from my own blood, from the very person I looked up to, the one who was supposed to be my guide, my protector, my brother, my older brother. He didn't just talk behind my back. He meticulously, maliciously dismantled my professional life, brick by agonizing brick, all because he couldn't stand to see me succeed. I'm gonna take you through every raw, painful, and ultimately vindicating step of how my own flesh and blood completely shattered my trust and my life. This isn't just a story, it's the unraveling of a family, a complex web of deceit that took years to untangle, and how I ultimately found my way back from the brink. Seriously, this is probably the most detailed, most personal story I've ever shared. You might want to grab a coffee or tea because we're going deep.
All right, so to truly understand the depth of this wound, we need to go back. This all started about 5 years ago when my relationship with my older brother, Mark, was what I genuinely believed was unbreakable. He was 4 years my senior, and for most of our lives, he was my hero. He taught me how to ride a skateboard, how to fix a leaky faucet, how to navigate the terrifying social landscape of high school. He had this easy charm, a quick laugh, and a seemingly boundless confidence that always pulled me up when I felt insecure. Our parents, both hardworking but emotionally reserved, had instilled in us a strong sense of family loyalty, almost to a fault. They'd always said brothers stick together, a mantra that ironically would come back to haunt me with the force of a tidal wave.
If I had to give this entire agonizing chapter of my life a title, it would simply be The Unforgivable Betrayal, how my own family broke me and how I fought back. More specifically, the brother who burned the bridge.
After college, Mark and I ended up working in the same industry, tech. I was in software development, focusing on user experience, while he was in sales, a natural fit for his charismatic personality. We didn't work at the same company, but our professional circles often overlapped. I was relatively new to the corporate world, fresh out of a graduate program, eager to make my mark. I poured all my energy into my job, often working late, taking on extra projects. I genuinely loved what I did, and I was good at it. My career trajectory was on an upward swing. I received positive performance reviews, landed a couple of high-profile projects, and even got a quick promotion. I was building a solid reputation.
Mark, at first seemed genuinely happy for me. He'd offer advice, share industry insights, and occasionally brag about my accomplishments to our parents. "My little brother's a rising star," he'd say, a wide grin on his face. I saw him as a mentor, someone who understood the pressures and opportunities of our field. He was always curious about my projects, asking specific questions, often wanting to know details about my team, my clients, my challenges. I shared everything openly and honestly, believing he was offering genuine support. Looking back, the early cracks were almost imperceptible, like hairline fractures in a foundation you assume is solid. They started small, with Mark becoming a little too interested in my successes, a little too quiet when I shared good news. "Oh, that project sounds complicated," he'd say when I excitedly told him about a successful launch. Or, "Are you sure you can handle that promotion given all the extra work?" I dismissed it as typical older brother skepticism, perhaps a touch of his own competitive nature. After all, he was in sales, he understood ambition. Then there were the helpful suggestions. He'd occasionally suggest I share more details about a challenging client with a mutual contact, or vent my frustrations about a difficult colleague to someone he knew. He'd frame it as networking or getting things off your chest. I, being naive and trusting, sometimes followed his advice, not realizing I was unwittingly providing him with ammunition. The real red flags began to appear when I started getting strange vibes at work. Colleagues who were once friendly became distant. Whispers would stop when I entered a room. My boss, who had always been incredibly supportive, started asking me pointed questions during my one-on-one meetings. Are you feeling overwhelmed by your workload? Or is everything all right on the team? We've heard some concerns. I was baffled. I felt like I was doing great. I put it down to office politics, or perhaps my own insecurity. The first truly jarring incident occurred when I was passed over for a major promotion I was absolutely qualified for and had been working towards for months. The position went to someone far less experienced, someone who had only been with the company for a year. I was devastated. When I asked my boss for feedback, his demeanor was cold. "Look," he said, "we value your work, but there have been some serious concerns raised about your judgment, your interpersonal skills, and your commitment to the team. Frankly, your reputation has taken a hit." He wouldn't elaborate, citing confidentiality, but he made it clear that rumors had circulated, and they were damaging. I remember that moment clearly. The air left my lungs, and a cold, hard resolve settled in. This is it, I thought. Enough is enough. They crossed a line they can never uncross. It wasn't just a missed promotion, it was a character assassination. It was my career, my future, being systematically undermined. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Someone was actively sabotaging me, and with a sickening certainty, I knew who. My older brother, the one who was supposed to be my biggest supporter, was my saboteur. It felt like the ground beneath me had evaporated. The person I had trusted, confided in, and looked up to was actively working to destroy my career, to steal my professional standing. My stomach churned. A wave of nausea washed over me. I had to get out of there. I mumbled a hasty excuse and practically ran out of the office, the echo of my boss's vague accusations echoing in my mind, mocking me. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced, replaying every suspicious incident, Mark's veiled comments, his helpful suggestions, his intense interest in my work, challenges. It all clicked into place, forming a horrifying tapestry of deceit. My anger was a hot, searing flame, but beneath it was a profound, aching sorrow. How could he? How could my brother do this? The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was a betrayal of our brotherhood, of my trust, of my very sense of self-worth. I felt violated, like a fool for having been so blind, so trusting. The next morning, I woke up with a singular, overwhelming purpose. I had to find out the full truth, every single detail of his smear campaign. And then, I had to do something about it. My first thought was to confront him directly, to unleash all my pain and fury. But a cooler, more logical part of my brain intervened. If he was truly engaged in a malicious smear campaign, a direct confrontation would just lead to denial, deflection, and him covering his tracks even further. I needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof of his manipulative tactics. My immediate raw emotional fallout was a constant knot in my stomach. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep properly. Every interaction with him felt like a performance, a charade. I'd look at him, his easy smile, his seemingly genuine interest, and a wave of revulsion would wash over me. The man I saw was a stranger, a master manipulator. Thoughts of revenge flickered through my mind. Expose him to his company, ruin his career. But then thoughts of my parents, the scandal, the absolute devastation it would cause. It held me back for a moment. This wasn't just about my professional setback. It was about protecting my reputation, about understanding the extent of his malice, and about preventing him from doing this to anyone else. My internal struggle was agonizing. Do I protect my family name and let this insidious sabotage continue? Or do I expose the truth and shatter everything, including my relationship with my parents and potentially my brother's career? The answer, slow and painful, began to emerge. I had to expose it, not out of malice, but out of a desperate need for justice, for the restoration of my own good name, and to understand why he would do this. I couldn't live with myself knowing that my brother was systematically destroying my career, and I was silently complicit.
I started to conceive my plan. It was slow, meticulous, and terrifying. My first step was to identify how he was spreading these rumors and who he was talking to. I needed to document his smear campaign to see the pattern. My research undertaken involved becoming a meticulous digital detective. I went back through every single conversation, every text, every email I'd had with Mark over the past year. I looked for patterns, for specific questions he'd asked that seemed innocent at the time, but now felt loaded. I remembered him always asking about specific colleagues or clients, especially when I mentioned any minor frustration. I started discreetly reaching out to old colleagues and acquaintances who were mutual contacts with Mark. I used carefully worded messages, framing it as catching up or seeking career advice, but subtly steering the conversation towards any strange interactions they might have had with Mark regarding me. I was careful not to accuse, just to listen. My new skill learned was how to extract information without revealing my suspicions. It was like playing a delicate game of chess, each move calculated. This was the immense patience and emotional toll this phase took. Every conversation was a tightrope walk, and the fear of being discovered, of him finding out I was investigating him, was constant. Obstacles and setbacks faced during this planning period were numerous. Many people were reluctant to speak ill of Mark, as he was generally well-liked and charismatic. Some were uncomfortable discussing office gossip. There were countless nights I almost gave up, where the weight of it all felt too heavy, like when a close friend warned me to be careful about what you say, you never know who's listening. It made me realize how widespread his network was, and how easily he could manipulate perceptions. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source, an old friend from my previous company, Sarah, who had also worked with Mark on a few projects. I had confided in Sarah about missing the promotion, about the vague rumors. She was genuinely sympathetic. A few weeks later, she called me, her voice hushed. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Mark, he's been saying some really awful things about you." She confessed that Mark had been actively spreading rumors, that I was lazy, difficult to work with, unreliable, and even that I was bad-mouthing the company to outside contacts. He had allegedly told Sarah that I was looking for a new job and wasn't committed. He had even fabricated stories about me being rude to clients. Sarah, being a good friend, had dismissed them at first, but the consistency and malice of Mark's comments had eventually raised her suspicions. She had heard him say similar things to other mutual contacts. This was it, the direct confirmation. Not just vague whispers, but concrete examples of his smear campaign from a credible source. Sarah even had a few text messages where Mark had alluded to my issues, masked under the guise of concern. It was circumstantial, but strong. I thanked Sarah profusely, assuring her of confidentiality. I meticulously documented everything she told me, along with the timestamps of the text messages. The strategic unfolding of my plan was precise. My immediate goal was to secure a new job, distance myself from the toxic environment, and then, only then, address the betrayal directly. I updated my resume, leveraged my network, carefully this time, and within a few months, I landed an even better role at a highly respected competitor. This was crucial. It showed I was resilient, and that Mark's tactics hadn't fully derailed my career. Once I had secured my new position, I carefully formulated the next phase. I didn't want to burn down his bridge and ruin his career entirely. Not yet. My primary goal was to protect myself, to clear my name, and to ensure he couldn't do this to anyone else, or at least not to me again. My focus was on informing my former colleagues about his manipulative tactics, rather than a full-scale public attack. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would burst when I finally executed the first step. I drafted a concise, professional email. It was addressed to a select group of my former colleagues whom I trusted, and who I knew had been subjected to Mark's whispers. I didn't accuse Mark directly in the email's opening. Instead, I focused on my new job, my gratitude for our time together, and then, very calmly, I wrote, "I also wanted to briefly address some of the unfortunate rumors that circulated about me in recent months. I've since come to understand that these false narratives were actively propagated by someone I once considered a close confidant and even family.
While I won't delve into the specifics, I felt it was important to clarify that any negative impressions you may have formed were based on deliberate misinformation stemming from what I now realize was a deep-seated jealousy. I simply wanted to share this so you understand the context and to urge you to be cautious of manipulative tactics from sources you might inherently trust. My integrity remains paramount to me, and I'm sharing this in the hope that it prevents similar situations for others. I attached screenshots of Mark's specific manipulative texts to Sarah, with her permission and her name redacted, and a brief, bulleted list of the types of false statements he had been making, fabricated stories about my commitment, false claims of me bad-mouthing the company. It was factual, to the point, and damning in its subtlety. I also, on the advice of a mentor, sent a separate, private email to my former boss. This one was more direct, outlining the specific instances of Mark's smear campaign, providing the evidence, and explicitly stating that my brother was the source. I didn't demand action, but I made it clear that I wanted him to be aware of the internal toxicity that had contributed to my departure.
And then, the moment I had both dreaded and yearned for arrived. The climax, the consequences.
The response from my former colleagues was immediate and overwhelming. My inbox flooded with messages of support, of understanding. Many of them confessed they had heard things, that they had been confused by the rumors, but seeing my documented evidence finally made sense. Some shared their own experiences of Mark's manipulative behavior, confirming a pattern. One former colleague even wrote, "I knew something was off. Mark always seemed a little too interested in your struggles, a little too keen to share concerns. Now it all clicks. I'm so sorry, man."
My former boss also responded, expressing shock and regret. He didn't explicitly confirm action against Mark, but he assured me the matter would be handled very seriously internally. The message was clear: Mark's behavior would not go unaddressed. I knew, from my inside knowledge of the company, that this kind of internal conduct, especially from a relative of a former employee, would be dealt with swiftly and discreetly but severely. His reputation within the company and his ability to climb the ladder would be effectively dead. The public exposure I orchestrated wasn't a newspaper article, but a quiet, internal reckoning. Mark's manipulative tactics were now known to the very people he had tried to poison against me. His charismatic facade was cracked, revealing the ugly jealousy beneath. He might not lose his job immediately, but his influence, his trustworthiness, his ability to manipulate were gone. That was my revenge. That was my justice. I never spoke to Mark about it directly. There was no need. The silence from him, the sudden lack of communication after my email circulated, was its own loud confession. And then, the final subtle vindication. I heard through the grapevine, from a mutual contact, that Mark had suddenly and unexpectedly resigned from his position at my old company. He cited personal reasons, but the timing, coming shortly after my email, was too coincidental. He had burned his own bridge, ultimately. It was a complex mix of emotions felt at this climax. Vindication, sadness, exhaustion, relief. Vindication, because my name was cleared and my career path was secure. Sadness, because it was my own brother, and the irreparable damage to our relationship and the pain it caused our parents was immense. Exhaustion, from the years of subtle sabotage, the agonizing investigation, the constant emotional strain, and relief, a profound, liberating relief, that the truth was finally out, his manipulative tactics exposed, and I was free. The full consequences for Mark were significant. While he found another job, his professional network was damaged, his reputation tainted, even if only subtly. His relationship with our parents was severely strained. They struggled immensely with the revelation of his jealousy and manipulative behavior. Our family gatherings became even more tense, with Mark often avoiding my gaze and I his. The trust between us was gone, replaced by an impassable chasm. The process of healing and rebuilding has been long and arduous. For me, it involved therapy, deep introspection, and a painful re-evaluation of what brotherhood truly means. I learned to set firm boundaries, to protect my energy, and to recognize the signs of passive-aggressive manipulation. My life fundamentally changed after the resolution of the betrayal. I thrived in my new role,
Unburdened by the constant shadow of his sabotage, I became more cautious, more discerning about who I trusted, especially in professional environments. It also instilled in me a profound understanding of the corrosive nature of jealousy and the devastating impact of internal family conflict. Looking back on it all now, after all these years, I feel a profound sense of peace mixed with lingering sadness. I am stronger than ever before, but forever changed. The naive younger brother who believed in unconditional sibling loyalty, who thought success would be celebrated, is gone. In his place is a man who understands the complexities of human nature, the darkness that can lurk beneath the most charming facade, and the incredible resilience required to fight for truth, even when it means tearing your own world apart. I carry the scars, yes, but also the strength that came from facing the unbearable and surviving. My new career, unblemished and thriving, is my vindication.
So, yeah, that's the story.
That entire period was one of the most brutal and transformative of my life. It took everything out of me, but it also taught me invaluable lessons about trust, resilience, boundaries, self-worth, the importance of documenting everything, and the true cost of insidious jealousy. It taught me that sometimes the hardest choices are the only right choices, no matter the personal cost. I'm sharing this because I believe many of you have faced some form of betrayal, especially from those closest to you in professional settings, or have experienced the pain of someone actively trying to undermine your success. To show that even from the deepest wounds, you can heal and rebuild. To shine a light on the hidden complexities of family dynamics and the sometimes uncomfortable truth that family doesn't always mean unconditional good. Maybe some of you can relate to the pain of betrayal, or the difficult decision to prioritize your career and reputation over a fractured relationship.
Whew, thanks for sticking with me through that absolute emotional marathon. I know it was a lot, but I truly wanted to share the full, unvarnished truth of what happened. If this story resonated with you, if you felt every twist and turn with me, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories, though hopefully my next one won't be quite as intense, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out.
What did you think? What part of this betrayal shocked you the most, or what would you have done in my shoes? I genuinely love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. This is the kind of story that sticks with you, and I bet it will for a while.
All right, everyone. That's it from me for this one. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.